The story goes back to April 1975. A basketball sports event was being held at the Jiangmian No. 1 cotton textile factory where Faye and I worked. Faye and I arrived a bit late because she was busy getting cheering flags and flowers ready. When she got there, the home team was trailing by 1 point and was at risk of losing. But Faye and I was very smart and quick. She raised the flag high and shouted slogans loudly, which made the guys' spirits soar. Thanks to that, the Jiangmian factory team made a comeback and won the game, and the cheering echoed all around. At the same time, Fan Yang was sitting on a train heading back to his hometown. Throughout the long journey, he didn't give his hands a break, but used his drawing talent to sketch portraits for the passengers around him to cure the boredom. This time Mu Yang was on a family visit leave, and he also brought along his teammates' requests to hand-deliver gifts to their families. In those times when stuff was scarce, the items he brought were like giving someone coal in a snowy winter, which was a super timely help for the soldiers' families. Taking advantage of the time when director Hong Chi was in a good mood after the cheerleading team's win, Faye and I hurriedly handed in her application to go to college, hoping the director would help her get a spot. However, director Hong Chi didn't give her any face at all, and even deliberately nitpicked to give her a hard time. This was already the 4th year Faye and I applied without any luck. She went home sadly, gave her dad the precious braised pork that she couldn't bear to eat at the factory, and then quietly went into her own room. Locking the door tightly in the small room, Faye and I wrote down her frustrations in her diary. It was the same every year. Whenever she put in her college application, she would get scolded and be given a hard time by the leaders. At first, she thought it was because she hadn't done a good job, but even though she tried to fix things the next year exactly as the leaders asked the year before, her name was still crossed out for all sorts of crazy random reasons. Fan Yang finally arrived at his hometown. At first, he planned to stay at a guest house. But hearing the room price was too expensive, he changed his mind. The few meager bucks in his pocket, he planned to save for Faye and I. Years ago, when he was about to leave as a volunteer youth, he didn't have a single penny on him, and only Faye and I lent him her last few coins. At that time, Mu Yang left Faye and I a precious iron box and promised to come back and redeem it one day. Many years had passed, and he was very eager to see her again. Planning to sleep temporarily at a public bathhouse for one night, but getting kicked out by people, Mu Yang had to rely on his memory to find the area of Faye Ni's house and temporarily slept on a 3-wheeled cart. Unexpectedly, a rainstorm hit in the middle of the night. The surrounding houses collapsed, and there were people calling for help. Mu Yang immediately rushed into the rubble, even knowing it was super dangerous. He charged in 3 times to save Jiang Lin's whole family of 3 and another person whose leg was crushed by a tree. Just as he rescued the last person out, a rock fell from above and hit Mu Yang's head. He was heavily injured and was taken to the emergency room by the people in critical condition. Mu Yang lay in a hospital in a coma, badly needing someone to take care of him. Jiang Lin's family should have taken this job because he saved their whole family's lives. But when director Hong Chi came looking for them, Jiang Lin and her mom pushed it away, finding all kinds of excuses to dodge the responsibility. At this time, Faye and I accidentally read a newspaper and saw a role model of a girl taking care of a wounded hero who was later picked as a model worker and even got a spot to go to college. Hearing her dad talk about a hero who just saved people in Jiangchang being heavily injured, Faye and I got an idea and proactively went to see director Hong Chi to volunteer to take care of him. Director Hong Chi was having a headache, not knowing who to assign to this tough case, and seeing someone volunteer, she agreed right away. Arriving at the hospital, Faye and I was stunned to realize the person lying on the hospital bed was Fan Yang. She remembered when they were little, they were desk mates, but every time she bumped into him, she would get bad luck. Faye and I planned to give up, but because her desire to go to college was too big, she had to bite the bullet and stay to look after him. Faye and I also had a close friend named Lin Mai. Lin Mai really liked Faye Ni's older brother. She often sneaked food stamps from her home to Faye and I to ask her to send them to her brother. Every day, Faye and I went to the hospital to take care of Mu Yang on time like go to work, helping him turn over, wiping his body, and shaving his beard. Time just passed like that. Every time she had to clean him up, she had to reassure herself. It went on like that for a solid month. It turned out, the man that Mu Yang saved that day was Jiang Lin's boyfriend. That night, the two of them were on a date when the house collapsed and his leg got crushed. Jiang Lin's dad had always looked down on this future son-in-law. Jiang Lin hoped her boyfriend would soon get a spot to go to college, but seeing Faye and I doing too well, this couple started scheming to snatch that one and only college spot. One day, while taking care of Mu Yang, Faye and I accidentally saw his sketch pad. Inside were incredibly vivid landscape drawings of the Beidawing area. Flipping through the pad, she also saw 2 large denomination bills carefully tucked inside. Remembering the old debt from years ago that he still hadn't paid back, Faye and I thought to herself that once he wakes up, She would definitely settle the score for both old and new debts all at once. The nurse ran breathlessly into the laundry room to find Fei and I, letting her know that Fong Yang's girlfriend had arrived. She even whispered to Fei and I to quickly hand over Mu Yang to that girlfriend to be free of the burden. Because in this hospital, nurses had seen many patients like him, so now that a family member came to claim him, it was for the best. At that moment, Fei and I suddenly felt a bit sad, thinking, if Mu Yang didn't need her care anymore right now, then her hard work to be considered for the model worker title would just go down the drain. However, that girlfriend only dropped by for a little bit and then left right away. She even asked Fei and I to continue staying to take care of Mu Yang for a while longer, and Fei and I agreed immediately. Hearing that music could help patients wake up faster, Fei and I asked her dad to get a music player at all costs. She played music for Mu Yang every single day, playing until the machine broke down, but he still hadn't woken up. Out of options, she had to switch to reading the books that he loved to him. Finally, the factory's nomination list to go to college was announced. Fei and I eagerly ran to look, but strained her eyes and still couldn't find her name anywhere. On the contrary, Jiang Lin was on the list. Fei and I was sad to the core. That night, while taking care of Mu Yang, thinking about the unfairness she had to endure during the day, she couldn't hold back her tears and burst out crying loudly, mumbling and hoping Mu Yang would wake up quickly. As if having telepathy, right when Fei and I was crying, Mu Yang slowly opened his eyes and woke up. Just waking up, the first thing Mu Yang asked Fei and I was why she was crying. Fei and I cried and smiled at the same time. He finally woke up. After checking, the doctor said Mu Yang's body functions were still fine, but ironically, he lost all his memories. He didn't remember who he was, nor did he remember anything about the past. Director Hong Chi praised Fei and I endlessly, promising that once Mu Yang fully recovered, she would register her as a provincial advanced worker, and by then the college spot would be a sure thing. So Fei and I lit up with hope again. She took care of Mu Yang even more thoughtfully, hoping he would recover his memory soon. Every day, she bought the most nutritious things for him, but Mu Yang's mind just stayed clueless, unable to remember anything. Fei and I was dying for Mu Yang to recover so she could have a chance to go to college, but he was only physically healthy while his memory was still nowhere to be found. Feeling depressed and lost, she went to see her old teacher. In those chaotic times, the teacher who used to stand on the podium now had to sweep floors at a theater. Fei and I went up to her teacher and naturally grabbed the broom to give him a hand. Hearing Fei and I pour her heart out, her teacher woke her up with one sentence. If going to school has to rely on fate, then it's totally fine not having that college degree. But knowing that it was Fei Ni's biggest dream, her teacher still encouraged her to keep trying. That night, Fei and I sat at her desk and mapped out a recovery plan for Mu Yang. Buying nutritious food for him required a lot of money. Looking at the spare change Lin, I asked her to send to her brother. Fei and I hesitated for a long time before deciding to pull out a bill from her meager savings of many years to take care of Mu Yang. Early the next morning, Fei and I went to the hospital, and her heart skipped a beat when she saw Mu Yang climbing out the window, about to jump down. It turned out his older sister wanted to take him back to a nursing home in their hometown, but he refused because he said he didn't know this girl at all. Fei and I rushed over to talk sense into Mu Yang's sister, pulling out the recovery plan she wrote last night to convince her that she could help him become independent, or at least know how to take care of himself so he wouldn't have to go to a nursing home. Seeing her sincerity, plus the fact that she was too busy to take care of her brother herself, his sister had to agree to let him stay. On the train back to school, his sister, Fong Jing, had her seat stolen by a jerk. She angrily pulled him up and chewed him out for his bad manners. Due to being too emotional and having low blood sugar, she passed out right on the spot. Luckily, there was a charming doctor on the train who gave up his sleeping berth for her and gave her a pack of cookies. At the hospital, Fei and I patiently taught Mu Yang everything from tying his shoes and washing clothes to brushing his teeth and making his bed. To encourage him, she even bit the bullet and used her own pocket money to buy steak and chocolate for him to eat. Seeing her savings just walking away, Fei and I discussed with Mu Yang that if she helped him do things he was supposed to do himself, he would have to pay a fee, with the goal of making him independent quickly. Mu Yang's shirt got ruined in the wash, so Fei and I took her dad's old shirt, altered it, and sewed it carefully for him. Mu Yang put it on, and it fit perfectly. Even though the shirt was full of patches, he loved it a lot because it was made by Fei Ni's own hands. He even demanded to draw a portrait of her. In Mu Yang's eyes right now, Fei and I was the best person ever, and he listened to whatever she said without question. One day, Fei and I took Mu Yang for a walk in the Jiangmian textile factory and ran into Ling, Yi, and Yifeng. Ling Yi saw that Yifeng was the son of the factory office director, so she was trying every way to win him over. When the four of them met under the trees, Fei and I introduced Mu Yang to them. Hearing Mu Yang's reputation as a hero who saved people, Yi Feng admired him greatly and even invited him to join the factory's basketball team. Earlier at the hospital, Ling had claimed to be Mu Yang's girlfriend to test if he really lost his memory. But now seeing that Yi Feng had a better future, she immediately flip-flopped, completely denied the relationship, and firmly stated she was not Mu Yang's girlfriend. Fei and I didn't care if they were really in love or not, but Ling Yi's totally two-faced attitude made her feel really confused. Fei and I took Feng Yang back to the places he used to live as a kid, hoping to help him get his memory back. Standing among the familiar scenes, Mu Yang indeed remembered a few pieces of his childhood, and he even acted fast to save a little boy who almost fell out of a tree. Fei and I was super impressed. Even though Mu Yang lost his memory, looking at his handsome appearance and sharp reflexes, nobody would think he was a patient. A bold idea flashed in Fei Ni's mind. She practically begged Mu Yang to go see Director Hong Chi and insist that he had completely recovered. In exchange for his favorite ice cream that he hadn't eaten for a long time, Mu Yang happily agreed right away. Fei and I started rehearsing with him, teaching him how to answer the questions that Director Hong Chi might ask. Mu Yang looked at the pre-written answers on the paper and carefully memorized them. When seeing Mu Yang standing in front of her looking healthy, Director Hong Chi was very happy. She asked how he felt and what he was thinking when he saved those people. Fei and I sat next to him and secretly rejoiced because she had made him study this exact question. Unexpectedly, Mu Yang didn't bother to answer according to the script, but he actually spoke even better than that. He stated that Fei and I was the person he was most grateful for all this time, and that she was the real hero. Sitting there hearing him praise her to the skies, Fei and I blushed bright red. To reward Mu Yang, Fei and I bit the bullet and spent a large sum of money to buy ice cream for him. The two of them walked past a musical instrument store, and Mu Yang couldn't help but touch the piano keys. Cheered on by Fei and I, he tried playing a few notes. In the sound of the piano, the image of his gentle grandma, and the silhouette of little girl Fei and I, practicing the piano hard years ago, came back to his mind, making him extremely emotional. Director Hong Chi promised that for sure this year Fei and I would get a spot at the Agricultural University. Fei and I was thrilled and ran right away to break the news to her best friend Lin Mai. Lin Mai was happy for her friend, but couldn't help feeling a bit sad thinking about Fei Ting. Fei Ting had been gone as a volunteer youth for a long time and still hadn't been allowed to return to the city. Lin Mai's living situation was also very tough. Her older brother got married, the whole family of several mouths crammed together, and her lazy sister-in-law pushed all the house chores onto her. Unable to stand this situation, Lin Mai made a long-distance call to Fei Ting. Over the phone, Fei Ting understood his girlfriend's hardship, but he also knew that if he came back right now, Fei Ni's house only had 2 rooms, with no place for Lin Mai to stay. Wanting Lin Mai to have a better life, Fei Ting painfully suggested breaking up. Lin Mai held the phone receiver with tears streaming down her face. Meanwhile, Xiao Feng, Director Hong Chi's assistant, wanted to save the college spot for her own boyfriend Wang Fa, tried every way to get dirt on Fei and I. She purposely snooped around and found out that Mu Yang actually hadn't recovered his memory at all. Xiao Feng immediately reported this to Director Hong Chi. Right away, Director Hong Chi's attitude towards Fei and I did a full 180. She called Fei and I into her office to question her clearly. Facing Director Hong Chi's anger, a scared Fei and I had no choice but to confess the truth. She made her write a self-criticism letter and announced the cancellation of her eligibility to be sent to college. All the good impressions of Fei and I in her eyes completely vanished. That day, Fei and I walked to the beach in a daze. She remembered that after getting scolded by Director Hong Chi, that chick Jiang Lin even came a mocker. Jiang Lin admitted that she had long been annoyed by Fei Ni's nerd vibe and did this time to fight for an opportunity for her boyfriend. Director Hong Chi absolutely hated lying, so she let everyone know that in the future, even if Mu Yang got his memory back or Fei and I became an advanced worker, she would never have a chance to go to college anymore. With her college dream crushed, Fei and I fell into despair. She went back to her old teacher to talk about her feelings. Her teacher gently comforted her that life has many crossroads, and college isn't the only path. Fei and I pulled herself together to go to work as usual. One time, she saw Lin Mai walking quite closely with a male co-worker. Knowing that Lin Mai and her older brother loved each other deeply, Fei and I pressed her with questions, and Lin Mai confessed. Fei Ting was worried that if he came home, his little sister wouldn't have a place to stay, so he kept refusing to apply to return to the city. Hearing that, Fei and I froze. Fei Ting was the older brother she loved the most. When they were little, he always saved the best things for her. and even went to the countryside in her place so she could stay in the city to work. Thinking of all the sacrifices her brother had made, Faye and I made up her mind to do something for him. She went to see Lin Mai and asked her friend to wait for her family for another 3 months, promising she would definitely arrange for the two of them to get married. To solve the housing problem, Faye and I asked her parents to find someone for her to go on blind dates with. Unexpectedly, her first date was none other than Yi Feng, director Hong Chi's son. Yi Feng was the heartthrob of the basketball team, came from a well-off family, and was very handsome, making him the dream guy of so many girls. But he had a secret crush on Faye and I from the very first time he saw her as the cheerleading captain. As soon as he heard Faye and I wanted to go on blind dates, he was the first to sign up. Meeting Yi Feng, Faye and I wasn't very interested. To her right now, as long as she found a guy with a decent house and okay looks, that was enough. On their first movie date, Yi Feng fell asleep twice. When he walked her home, he ran into Faye Ni's mom. She recognized Yi Feng, so she warmly invited him inside for a meal. Yi Feng was overjoyed and quickly agreed. As soon as he stepped into the house, Yi Feng froze up when he saw Fang Yang was also there. With just one look, Yi Feng realized this was a tough love rival. After that, Faye and I told Mu Yang to go home first, while Yi Feng stayed to eat with her family. After the meal, Faye and I walked Yi Feng to the door and was straight up about her demands. Later, when her brother came back, she would give up her factory job for him. Yi Feng was a bit worried because he was afraid his mom wouldn't accept a daughter-in-law without a job. Going home to talk with his mom, just as expected, director Hong Chi didn't agree. Finally, she laid out a condition. As long as Faye and I gave up the idea of going to college, she would let the two of them get married. Yi Feng was thrilled, believing that he could convince Faye and I. The next day, Yi Feng came over again to ask Faye and I to a movie and passed on his mom's message. Just as the two were about to leave, Mu Yang showed up and insisted on tagging along no matter what. Left with no other choice, Yi Feng had to bring Mu Yang along, creating a hilariously awkward 3-person date. Entering the movie theater, Fang Yang purposely wedged himself in between Faye and I and Yi Feng. Seeing Faye and I getting too tired and dozing off, he gently rested her head on his shoulder, feeling totally satisfied having her by his side. After the movie, Mu Yang still planned to keep playing the third wheel. But Yi Feng showed no mercy and kicked his love rival right back to the hospital. When it was just the two of them left, Yi Feng bluntly reminded Faye and I that if she was serious about this relationship, she should keep her distance from Mu Yang to avoid gossip. And most importantly, from now on, stop thinking about going to college. That was exactly director Hong Chi's idea too. Faye and I sat spaced out on the porch for a long time, but thinking of her older brother. She told herself she could endure any hardship. She decided to go say goodbye to Mu Yang. The next morning, she went to the hospital and saw that Mu Yang had been moved to a regular hospital room. It was crowded and noisy here, with people coughing and having fevers. The conditions were really poor. Mu Yang at that time was busy drawing a picture for an old man in the same room, making the old guy smile from ear to ear. Faye and I invited Mu Yang to go see a movie, eat steak, and generously bought him the ice cream he had always been wishing for. After that, they went to the department store together. This time, Mu Yang wanted to pick out a dress for Faye and I, but she turned it down. The two kept going back and forth wanting to buy things for each other. Finally, Faye and I used her little remaining money to buy him a plum red sweater. Walking Mu Yang back to the hospital gate, Faye and I told him that later he could go to the volunteer youth office to ask for housing, and announced that her mission to care for him was over here, and from now on, she wouldn't come visit him anymore. Hearing that, Mu Yang got sad and pretended to say he still didn't know how to tie his shoelaces to keep her coming back to teach him. Faye and I got so mad her eyes turned red. She was heartbroken and confused, asking him why he kept clinging to her like that. She confessed that back in the day, she took care of him to use him to go to college, and now that the hope for college was completely gone, they could call it even. After saying that, she cried heavily and rode her bike away. Mu Yang rushed to chase after her, but because his shoelaces were untied, he tripped and fell flat on the ground. That night, lying on his hospital bed and flipping through a sketch pad, Mu Yang remembered the silhouette of a girl who often showed up in his dreams. Suddenly, all his memories came rushing back. It was Faye and I. She was the very first person he saw when he woke up and had been taking care of him with all her heart this whole time. Remembering everything, Mu Yang couldn't wait until morning. He ran straight to Faye Ni's house and climbed up a nearby tree to wave hello to her on the second floor. Meeting Faye and I, and hearing her explain why she had to go on blind dates lately, Mu Yang desperately begged her to give him 2 or 3 months of time, and she absolutely had to wait for him. Now that he had got his memory back, he started figuring out how to secure their future. As soon as the sun came up, he ran to the newspaper office to look for Uncle Bo Quan, an old friend of his dad's, to ask for a job. Uncle Bo Quan arranged for him to join an editor training class for 2 months, and after graduating, he would have a stable job with a pretty good allowance. Muyang agreed right away and asked his uncle to keep it a secret that he had remembered everything. At this time, Ling Yi heard that Yifeng still wasn't engaged. So whenever she was free, she ran to the textile factory to watch him play basketball, finding every way to get close to him. One time, director Hong Chi saw a pretty girl in the stands looking at her son with admiring eyes, and she instantly felt really pleased. Plus, Ling Yi was a college student, and once she graduated, she'd have a decent state job, which totally met her standards for an ideal daughter-in-law. As for Fang Yang, he went to the volunteer youth office to ask for a dorm apartment. The leader there knew he was a hero who saved people, so he specially called Director Hong Chi at the Jiangmian textile factory to ask for her help in arranging it. Fang Yang stood right next to the educated youth office. Hearing Su Chi promise on the phone to assign him a house, he was extremely overjoyed. As long as he had a house, that was all that mattered. Leaving the office, Fang Yang happily ran to tell Fei and I that Su Chi had agreed to provide the house. When the time came, he would lend it to Fei and I to live in, so she wouldn't have to worry about her older brother having no place to stay when he returned. Hearing Fang Yang worry about her like that, Fei and I was very touched, but she also knew that it was his house after all, so she still had to go on blind dates. That day, hearing Yifeng invite her to his house to meet Director Su, Fei and I even put on makeup carefully and went to the store early to buy a bag of fruits. Yifeng specifically told his mom that on the day Fei and I came over to visit, she absolutely had to buy a fish. Su Chi agreed, but on the day Fei and I arrived, she purposely called Ling Yi over as well to give her a hard time. At Su Chi's house, Ling Yi sat right next to her. Su Chi ordered Fei and I to go prep and braise the fish, even emphasizing that Ling Yi loved eating braised fish. Fei and I clearly knew Su Chi was intentionally giving her a hard time, but since she was her boss after all, she still obediently went into the kitchen to cook the fish. During the meal, Su Chi purposely praised Ling Yi for being a college student, saying she was handy, pretty, and talented, unlike some people who couldn't get into college no matter how hard they tried. Sitting nearby and listening, Fei and I knew perfectly well that Su Chi was taking a jab at her. Even though Yifeng also praised Fei and I endlessly and even asked her to play a piece on the accordion for everyone to hear, Fei and I only knew how to play the piano. This time, Ling Yi gained the upper hand again, smugly performing the accordion in front of everyone. Taking advantage of the time, Su Chi and Yifeng were enjoying the music. Fei and I quickly ate up the only plate of fish on the table. Waiting for Ling Yi to finish playing, Fei and I wiped her mouth, stood up, said she was full, and asked to leave early. When leaving, she even took back the gift she had brought over. Yifeng chased after her downstairs, hoping Fei and I would go back and apologize to his mom. Fei and I bluntly said that Director Su never liked her to begin with, and the daughter-in-law she wanted was Ling Yi, but Yifeng still stuck to his own opinion. Fei and I didn't listen to him and rode her bike away. She took the gift meant for Su Chi straight to the hospital and told Fang Yang about what happened during the day. Su Chi had originally promised to assign a house to Fang Yang, which also meant the house plan for assistant Feng Lin was canceled. Feng Lin was a very scheming girl. She deliberately slandered Fang Yang, saying he had behavior issues, often ran to the factory to look for Fei and I, and she saw the two of them talking with her own eyes. If she assigned the house to Fang Yang this time, in case he did something inappropriate later, it would affect Su Chi. Su Chi, who usually acted all high and mighty, was afraid of being dragged down by Fang Yang. So she changed her mind, saying the organization didn't agree to provide him with a house, and houses would be prioritized for married youths. Fang Yang was sad and planned to go to the factory to tell Fei and I about this, but unexpectedly saw Yifeng pulling and dragging Fei and I without letting go. Yifeng forced Fei and I to go apologize to his mom and said that because of her, he didn't hesitate to argue with his mom, and his mom even promised to introduce a job to Fei Ni's older brother. Fei and I didn't want to give up going to college, but Yifeng had lost his patience, saying that girls only go to college to marry into a good family, and so many girls dreamed of marrying him. Fei and I realized Yifeng didn't respect her at all and even had a heavily patriarchal mindset. While the two were struggling, Fang Yang pulled Yifeng away and stood by Fei Ni's side. Yifeng unceremoniously criticized Fang Yang for being nosy and told Fei and I to get on his bike. But this time, Fei and I didn't give in. No matter how Yifeng threatened her, she still got on Fang Yang's bike and left. Fang Yang told Fei and I the reason his house assignment was canceled. Fei and I suggested that maybe the two of them should register to get married first. That way, Su Chi wouldn't have any reason to talk. Fang Yang agreed immediately, and the two quickly reached an agreement. Each would get half of the house, both would have a place to stay, and it was just a fake marriage anyway. Fei and I submitted her marriage application to Su Chi. She was very surprised But thinking that this way her son would no longer long for Faye and I, she happily issued her a recommendation letter. Holding the letter, Faye and I went to the hospital to find Fong Yang, only to hear the nurse say he had gone out since early morning. Arriving home, she saw Fong Yang was right there with lots of gifts. He had been quick on his feet to break the news that the two were getting married to Faye Ni's parents. Her parents were super surprised, thinking their daughter was going to marry Yi Feng. They didn't expect it to be Fong Yang. Therefore, seeing Faye and I come back, her parents immediately demanded an explanation. It was obvious that they didn't agree to this marriage. Her mom thought the guy didn't have a job and didn't even have a place to live. But Faye and I was still firm in choosing Fong Yang and wanted to marry him. Faye Ni's dad didn't agree either. His daughter was so outstanding. Plus, Fong Yang was someone who had suffered a head injury. Faye Ni's parents' attitude was very definitive. On the way back, Faye and I and Fong Yang got into an argument. Fong Yang believed that getting married was a big deal and had to be reported to the parents. And he had a way to make Faye Ni's parents adore this future son-in-law. Faye and I was half believing and half doubting, but thinking about getting a house by being with Fong Yang. She agreed to let him give it a try. Hearing the news that Faye and I was about to marry Fong Yang, Yi Feng rushed home to find his mom, hoping Su Qi would help. But Su Qi never liked Faye and I in the first place, and even forced Yi Feng to go on a date with Ling Yi, or else she would disown him. Because of her family background, Fong Jing was looked down upon by her co-workers at her unit, and she wasn't even allowed to participate in scientific research projects. Because of this, she always felt resentful inside. Not long after, a guy named Chu Hua asked her out. The two had only met 2 or 3 times, but the guy already popped the question to marry her. Fong Jing didn't know Chu Hua that well yet, but she knew he had a really good background, with both parents being red and expert cadres. So marrying him would definitely benefit her. Thus, after thinking it over for 3 hours, she agreed. Fong Yang, wholeheartedly wanting to get his future father-in-law support, went to their house again. Seeing him playing chess with someone else, Fong Yang showed off his skills and won a week's worth of watermelons from the opponent. Not only did he play chess, but he also handmade a very expensive red sandalwood Chinese chess set to give to Faye Ni's dad. Fong Yang explained that he repurposed it from old furniture his classmates threw away, proving he was very handy. And if Faye and I followed him later, she definitely wouldn't have to worry about going hungry. Furthermore, Fong Yang also analyzed Yi Feng's feelings for Faye and I to her dad. Yi Feng had been spoiled since childhood, didn't respect Faye and I at all, and only saw her as a female worker trying to climb the social ladder. As for him, he saw Faye and I as a kind-hearted girl who deserved to be cherished and protected. Faye Ni's dad, of course, wanted his daughter to find a man who treated her well. Plus, Fong Yang was smart, sharp, and sincere, so he was quickly convinced by him. Faye and I went to tell her best friend Lin Mai about her plans. Lin Mai also opposed Faye and I marrying Fong Yang, feeling there was something wrong with his head. But seeing her best friend being so iron-willed, Lin Mai had to agree to keep the fake marriage a secret. However, she also hoped Faye and I could walk the right important path in her life, so she secretly called to inform Fei Ting. Fong Yang made his future father-in-law a Tai Chi manual. Among the neighbors, only Faye Ni's dad's manual was published as a book. So they started looking at him differently and asked to be his disciples to learn the art. Thanks to that, Faye Ni's dad built up his reputation in the neighborhood. Faye Ni's mom found out from Lin Mai that her daughter was rushing to get married, so she could move out of the house early and free up the room. She was very worried, immediately pulling Faye and I aside to advise her to think carefully. Marriage is a lifelong major event and shouldn't be rushed. Let alone Fong Yang being someone whose mind wasn't clear and whose family background wasn't good. Faye Ni's mom said these exact words right in front of Fong Yang. However, Faye and I was very calm, saying she knew all of that, but she chose Fong Yang because she wanted an equal relationship. Fong Yang was the right person for her. She didn't want to marry into Director Su's family just to live an inferior life later on. Seeing that her daughter had thought it through, Faye Ni's mom had to agree, on the appointed day, to go to the Civil Affairs Bureau to register their marriage. Faye and I and her parents waited forever at the door, but didn't see Fong Yang anywhere. Her parents got angry and went home. Lin Mai told Faye and I that Fei Ting had returned. The older brother, hearing his little sister's decision, worried it was just an impulsive act, so he rushed home overnight to capture and tie Fong Yang up. At this time, Fong Yang was tied to a tree. Fei Ting held a weapon against him, interrogating him to see if he had any evil schemes. Right at that moment, Faye and I and Lin Mai hurried over and untied Fong Yang. Faye and I clearly explained the reason to her brother, and on that exact same day, they went to take their wedding photos and register their marriage. When taking photos, both of them were really shy. Their first photo together was captured. In 1975, the two officially got married. On their wedding night, Fang Yang went to a guest house to rent a room for them to spend the night. Fei and I was a bit nervous, so she wrote down 3 rules, clearly stating they only had the title of husband and wife, but couldn't do any husband and wife stuff. Later, when she gets into college, Fang Yang is not allowed to stop her. After reading it, Fang Yang still happily signed his name. Fei and I slept on the bed, while Fang Yang laid out a mattress and slept on the floor. The 2 young people imagined and planned out the layout and decoration for their future new home together. After that, Fei and I and Fang Yang went back to the Jiangmian textile factory together and slammed their bright red marriage certificate onto Su Qi's desk. However, she made excuses that this round of house assignments had already finalized its list, telling them to wait for the next batch of houses. This was clearly going back on her word. At first, Su Qi said houses would be prioritized for married people. Now that Fei and I had the marriage certificate, she broke her promise. Seeing that Fei and I was about to get into a huge fight with Su Qi, Fang Yang quickly pulled her out of the office, telling her that Su Qi was the factory leader after all, and if they pushed it too far, she might even lose her job later. Fei and I sat down by the side of the road in despair and buried her head, crying. From taking the college entrance exam to getting a house, it seemed like not a single step of hers went smoothly. Su Qi promised and then changed her mind. This was really bullying people too much. Fang Yang knew she was very sad, so he comforted her to give him some time, and he would get back the house that belonged to them. That day, Fang Yang took Fei and I back to her parents' house to eat. At 11 p.m., he tucked a red wedding blanket under his arm and sneaked Fei and I into Su Qi's office to stay. Fang Yang brought Fei and I to stay inside the factory office. Early in the morning, a lot of people crowded around to watch the drama. Su Qi was furious, criticizing them for messing around. Fang Yang shamelessly said that he and his wife were newlyweds without a place to stay, so they had to crash here temporarily if they didn't get assigned a house. He and his wife would continue to stubbornly stay right here. Of course, Su Qi wasn't easily scared. She immediately ordered her assistant Feng Lin to throw Fei Ni's stuff out. Hearing the name Feng Lin, Fang Yang remembered that she was the one who took their house lot. Now meeting her again, he suddenly remembered that the guy he once rushed into the collapsed house to save was Feng Lin's lover. This time it was the right person. Fang Yang stood right in front of Feng Lin, reminding her that as a college student of the factory, she should show some spirit and give up the house to someone who needed it more. When Fang Yang started blabbering about that dark and windy night, the collapsed house, and how he rushed in to save someone, right in the middle of his story, Feng Lin immediately cut him off, proactively asking the director to give up the house. Just like that, Fang Yang succeeded. Feng Lin wasn't married yet, but secretly hooked up with a lover outside. If this got out, her reputation later on would be ruined. Therefore, she naturally had to give up the house to keep him quiet. But Feng Lin wasn't someone to mess with either. She went to buy a bucket of paint herself and smeared it all over, ruining all the walls of the house. Fang Yang pulled Fei and I over to check out the house and caught Feng Lin vandalizing it. So he reminded her that if she ever did anything bad to them, he would remember and spill the beans about things that shouldn't be told. Feng Lin got scared. Having her weakness held by someone else, she had to obediently listen. Looking at the ruined walls, Fang Yang took Fei and I to the store to buy some paints. And then they improvised together, painting on the walls with their own hands. This way was way prettier than just doing a simple paint job. Next to the painting of a canola flower field under the sun drawn by Fang Yang, Fei and I wrote a little poem. At that moment, both were immersed in happiness as their dreams had come true. Fang Jing and Chu Hua got married. After getting married, Fang Jing could finally return to the project to continue her research. Thanks to Chu Hua's status as a high-ranking official's son, Fang Jing was no longer bullied. When she followed Chu Hua to his home, his parents treated her very warmly, and Chu Hua's grandma even took out a big red envelope for her. As Fang Jing reached out to take it, she heard Chu Hua's grandma mistakenly call out another girl's name. Fang Jing froze. It turned out the person Chu Hua loved deeply was a girl named Yan Yan. On their wedding night, Fang Jing asked Chu Hua about Yan Yan. At this point, Chu Hua didn't hide at all, admitting that he used to love that girl deeply, and Fang Jing looked a lot like Yan Yan. Fang Jing finally understood that she was just a replacement. Chu Hua also clapped back that Fang Jing marrying him was also for a purpose. She only started getting eager after knowing his background, and right after making things official. She immediately submitted an application to the organization, hoping to get back into the research group. Therefore, the two of them were just as bad as each other. The truth was exactly as Chu Hua said. That night, he stayed at his unit, and their wedding night was not happy at all. The next day, Chu Hua had just finished a surgery and walked out of the hospital room when he saw Fang Jing bringing food to him. At that time, she was wearing a light yellow dress, looking as gentle as a butterfly. In that moment, Chu Hua's heart fluttered. Even though Fang Jing knew Chu Hua had someone else in his heart, she was now married. So of course, she would fulfill some of her duties as a wife. After getting the house, Fei and I and Fang Yang started using their own money to buy furniture. Because they didn't have enough money to buy new things, the two went to the flea market to buy stuff. The house didn't have enough space to fit 2 single beds. So Fang Yang had to follow Fei Ni's request and buy a bunk bed. When neighbors came over to check out their new house, Fei and I worried their fake marriage would be discovered. So she quickly said that because they were broke, they had to buy this kind of bed. Fei and I and Fang Yang got married without any money. Didn't hand out wedding candies to their co-workers and didn't hold a wedding ceremony either. When Fei Ni's dad was playing chess with the neighbors, they reminded him to look carefully into Fang Yang's background. Right now, he only has the title of a hero, but no one knows what he did in the past or if he ever had a wife and kids. Fei Ni's dad thought about it and felt it made sense. So he went home and asked his wife for a liquor ration coupon, planning to find a chance to get Fang Yang drunk to ask about his past. Fei Ni's older brother, Fei Ting, finally came back. Fang Yang also went out to welcome his brother-in-law. As soon as Fei Ting got off the bus, he brought the gifts he had prepared and went to look for Lin Mei. In the past, Lin Mei's dad didn't like Fei Ni's family background, so she took the initiative to go with her brother to Lin Mei's house to talk about marriage. Lin Mei's dad bluntly said that Fei Ting wasn't good enough for his daughter and that there were guys in the factory with better conditions chasing after her. Fei Ting's forehead was covered in sweat. Fei and I immediately helped put in a few good words for her brother. Finally, Lin Mei's parents gave a condition. As long as Fei Ting got a stable job, they would definitely reconsider this marriage. Fei Ting agreed out loud, but deep down he wasn't so sure. Back then, finding a job wasn't easy at all. It was mostly based on a replacement system, and his younger sister had already taken over their mother's job. Carrying out his mission, Fei Ni's dad went to call Fang Yang over for a drink. The two of them drank cup after cup, and Fei Ni's dad started asking Fang Yang about who he met and what happened when he worked as an educated youth in the countryside. The more the father and son-in-law drank, the happier they got. Actually, Fang Yang was a really great guy. Fei Ni's dad got really drunk, and the two of them went outside together. After getting drunk, Fei Ni's dad spoke from his heart, saying he wasn't a good father because he couldn't even throw a wedding for his daughter, let alone invite relatives and friends over for a lively feast. He originally planned to fish for information from Fang Yang, but who would have thought Fei Ni's dad would get himself drunk instead? He even talked about his own past, saying he regretted not marrying another rich girl. Fang Yang secretly laughed, then personally took his father-in-law home. He slipped a piece of paper into the old man's pocket, writing that he now knew some of his father-in-law's little secrets and hoping he would put in a good word for him in front of Fei and I. Fang Yang wrote a letter to his older sister to announce he was getting married. Fang Jing packed her bags, getting ready to go to Jiangcheng to attend her brother's wedding. Seeing this, Chu Hua asked if he needed to go with her. Fang Jing didn't force him. She was treating Chu Hua very politely now. Knowing that Chu Hua already had someone else in his heart, she was very sensible. Just fulfilling her duties as a wife was enough. She didn't need to bother him with everything. Fang Yang always kept his father-in-law's regret in mind, that getting married required a royal wedding. So he secretly took some of Fei Ni's savings, prepared to host a banquet, bought wedding candies, and specifically asked Fei Ni's brother to help find a chef. Fang Jing set off for Jiangcheng to attend her brother's wedding. Her husband, Ji Hua, complained out loud that he didn't want to go, but he secretly booked the same train as his wife. He even thoughtfully booked a soft sleeper for her, taking care of her every need along the way, and even arranging her resting place perfectly. Both husband and wife were stubborn and neither would give in. But Ji Hua was the one who lost the battle every time. When night came, he shamelessly went to knock on his wife's door to make peace. That morning, at the cafeteria of the Jiangmian textile factory, Fang Yang roped his brother-in-law in to help, planning to treat all the factory workers to a huge feast. Seeing his wife about to wear her work uniform, he thoughtfully told Fei and I to change into a beautiful dress instead. When lunchtime came, Muyang totally surprised Fei and I. In front of all their co-worker friends, he held a small ceremony with the most sincere blessings. Madame Hong Qi personally officiated the wedding. Fei Ni's parents were also there, along with Mu Yang's sister and her husband. Standing next to each other, the couple truly looked like a perfect match. The sound of applause echoed throughout the hall. When lunch began, every table had a giant plate of carp. Looking at the lavish feast and knowing her husband had paid for all, Fei and I felt happy, but also heartbroken over the money. She kept spacing out, worrying about where her husband got so much money to pay for it, and wondering how long they would have to work like crazy to pay off the debt. After the wedding was over and they got home, Mu Yang threw himself on the bed and pretended to be asleep. When Fei and I asked about that money, He played dumb at first, but his wife eventually figured out that he had secretly taken it from her own savings. Faye and I froze when she heard that. Mu Yang could only mumble an explanation, saying he felt the money was totally worth spending because he wanted to give his father-in-law and her family a proud and honorable wedding. Meanwhile, Lin Mei's parents were still desperately setting up blind dates for their daughter. This time, it was a young man from a well-off family. But Lin Mei remained completely loyal to Fei Ting. She purposely announced straight up at the dinner table that she already had a boyfriend, and bluntly said she hated those well-connected guys. According to her, it was exactly because these well-connected people took up all the spots that her boyfriend was struggling to find a job. Seeing this, the blind date got the hint and quietly left. Lin Mei got furiously scolded by her parents again. She felt sorry for herself and cried. Her parents opposed Fei Ting only because he didn't have a stable job, but she thought that wasn't his fault, and Fei Ting himself was in a very tough spot too. After attending her brother's wedding, that happy vibe deeply touched Fong Jing's heart. When she returned to the hotel that night, she remembered her deep love from the past. Just because of her status, the two of them had to break up, and her ex even cruelly threw the candies she gave him on the ground. While she was lost in sadness, there was a knock on the door. It was Ji Hua. He shyly said he had checked out of his old room and wanted to stay in the same room with her. In fact, Ji Hua really loved his wife. From the very first time he met her, he found her very special, not just because she looked a bit like his ex-girlfriend. Ji Hua held Mu Jing's hands and looked deeply into her eyes. In that moment, the feelings they had held back for so long burned like a fire, and the two hugged each other passionately. Lately, Fei and I was coming home late all the time. Because of the incident where Mu Yang spent their secret stash without asking to treat the guests, she now had to take on extra work folding paper boxes at night to make up for it. Seeing his wife working so hard, Mu Yang sincerely apologized and promised that from now on, he would listen to his wife for everything big and small in the house. Hearing this, Fei and I laughed out loud, so the couple happily sat together folding boxes. Early the next morning, Fong Jing said goodbye to her brother and Fei and I to head home. She left some money for the two of them. Mu Yang quickly handed it over to his wife to manage. Seeing that her brother now had a happy home, Mu Jing felt a sense of relief and was genuinely happy for him from the bottom of her heart. As for Fei and I, she was still desperately worried about finding a job for her brother. Fei Ting, hearing that Manager Wan mentioned an opening that was perfect for her brother, she immediately asked him for help. Mr. Wan subtly hinted that he wanted to buy a TV, but didn't have a TV ration coupon. Fei and I seized the chance and asked him for 2 days to get that coupon at all costs. Fei Ting didn't just sit around waiting for things to fall into his lap, either. He went to the factory office and used the slow and steady tactic, just stubbornly sitting there to persuade the bosses. Finally, they had to give in and arrange for him to work temporarily at the city milk station. His daily job was washing milk bottles. Amidst an endless pile of bottles and the gossiping ladies chatting nonstop at his ears, Fei Ting's head was pounding. But since he got this job with such great difficulty, he told himself he had to bite the bullet and keep working. Feng Lin heard rumors that even though Fei and I and Fong Yang were married, they slept separately on bunk beds, so her curiosity flared up again. She suspected these two had a fake marriage to trick everyone, so she grabbed a bag of fruit and went to find Fei and I, using the excuse of visiting their home to snoop around. Looking at Feng Lin's behavior, Fei and I knew right away she was up to no good. She quickly handed her bag to Mu Yang and gave him a meaningful wink. Mu Yang understood his wife's hint right away. He took a shortcut and ran for his life back home, climbed through the bedroom window, and quickly tossed all the blankets and stuff from the top bunk to the bottom bed, faking a scene as if the couple always slept in the same bed. When Feng Lin entered the room, seeing the top bed completely empty without a speck of dust, but all the stuff piled up below, she was still suspicious. When no one was looking, Feng Lin sneaked a peek into their drawer and saw that the stack of condoms the factory handed out was still completely untouched. Not a single one was missing. Believing she had caught them red-handed, she went straight to report it to Madame Hong Chi and even invited her to come over tonight to catch them in the act. That night, when Madame Hong Chi and some ladies from the factory suddenly pushed the door open and rushed in, they saw Mu Yang and Fei and I lying together in the bottom bed, rubbing their eyes in confusion and asking what was going on. Seeing both the husband and wife lying next to each other in their shorts, everyone believed they were a real married couple. Feng Lin still kept pushing it, questioning why they had been married for so long, but the condoms were still untouched, and there was no sign of having kids either. Mu Yang got annoyed and snapped back, saying he bought his own special kind outside and didn't care for the stuff the factory gave out. After that incident, Fei and I and Mu Yang learned their lesson. Every night, they purposely made really loud noises that kept the neighbors awake. By the next day, Rumors about the couple's bedroom activities had spread all over the factory. Whenever the female workers saw Faye and I, they would cover their mouths and giggle. Some older ladies were even considerate enough to sneak a few condoms into Faye's hands, afraid the couple was using too many and would run out, making her face turn completely red, just wishing the ground would swallow her up. When everyone finally stopped doubting their marriage, Faye and I started losing sleep over the TV ration coupon to secure a job for her brother. Mu-Yang went asking around the black market and found out there was someone who could assemble a TV, but it would take some time to stall manager Juan, so he wouldn't give her brother's job spot to someone else. Mu-Yang took a risk and personally drew a fake TV ration coupon that looked exactly like the real thing, holding the coupon in their hands. Manager Juan and his wife were thrilled, constantly pulling it out to admire it. But after looking at it closely for a while, Mr. Juan discovered it was a fake. He immediately went to find Mu-Yang to settle the score. At this point, Mu-Yang confessed the truth and promised that this coupon would definitely be exchanged for a real TV, just asking them to give him a few more days. Back then, TV coupons were as precious as gold, and hardly anyone in the whole city had seen one with their own eyes. So hearing Mu-Yang's firm promise, Mrs. Wan had to patiently wait a little longer to see how things went. As for Fei Ting, he went with Lin Mei to formally meet her family. As soon as Lin Mei's parents saw him, they showed a nasty attitude and didn't even want to invite him to dinner. Hearing that Fei Ting got a job, they warmed up a bit. But as soon as they heard it was washing bottles at the milk station, they changed their tone and started mocking him. They immediately bragged that the other day, someone introduced Lin Mei to a guy working in the transport team, whose future was way brighter than Fei Ting's. Feeling insulted, Fei Ting suddenly stood up and declared bluntly, he knew Lin Mei only loved him, and he would work his hardest to bring her happiness. After saying that, he turned his back and walked straight out. Lin Mei ran after him. She wasn't mad at all. Instead, she felt really proud of her boyfriend's toughness. Even though Fei Ting was struggling right now, she believed that as long as he had ambition, the two of them would definitely have their proud day to shine. Fang Yang found a record player somewhere and secretly brought it home to play music for Fei and I. In those poor times when things were scarce, Fei and I had never heard such beautiful music. Mu-Yang also skillfully made a paper lantern, making the room feel super romantic. Looking at the glowing light and listening to the sweet music, Fei and I felt very satisfied. She didn't expect that someone who usually looked so ordinary like Mu-Yang could create such magic. After the music finished, Mu-Yang hurriedly took the player back to return it. Fei and I thought it was weird and wondered where he got this precious thing, so she quietly followed him. It turned out Mu-Yang went to a friend's house, and the two of them were busy putting together a pile of parts. Oh my god, they were building a TV by themselves, just with a few blueprints. They could put a bunch of parts together into a TV with both picture and sound. It was truly an unbelievable but real thing. Fei and I excitedly joined in too, staying up all night to study the blueprints with them. Mu-Yang was already super handy, plus Uncle Wang, a great technician in the factory who looked like a normal worker on the outside, but had crazy good skills at building TVs. At this time, Fang Jing's research team was getting ready to go to Jiangcheng for a while. She was really excited to be living in the same city as her little brother, but it wasn't until right before she left that she remembered she had to tell her husband, Kuei Hua. That night when she got home, she saw Kuei Hua was drunk. Mu Jing gently woke him up to tell him the news. Unexpectedly, Kuei Hua opened his eyes, looked at his wife, but called out another woman's name. Mu Jing was stunned. She had heard this girl's name before, because Kuei Hua's grandmother once mistook her for that girl. It turned out Kuei Hua always kept his ex in his heart. While drunk, he mumbled about wanting to see her again and regretted that he couldn't cure her illness. Seeing her husband hurting over his ex, Mu Jing felt heartbroken to the bone. She found a photo of that girl, and it turned out the girl looked exactly like her. Mu Jing broke down, realizing she was just a replacement. The next morning when Kuei Hua woke up, he saw the photo of his ex left on the table, with a message from his wife on the back. Mu Jing had already gotten on the train to Jiangcheng. Kuei Hua panicked and ran to the station to look for his wife car by car, but couldn't find her. Mu Jing hid inside the train car, her eyes full of tears. Finally, the homemade TV was successfully built. When they saw the lively picture show up on the screen, Fei and I and Mu Yang went crazy with joy and hugged each other tightly. They brought the TV to the boss's house, making her extremely happy. The neighbors heard the news and also crowded in to watch out of admiration. Thanks to making the boss look good, the boss was very satisfied and kept the promise to help. Not long after, Fei Ting was officially transferred to the propaganda department and became a regular staff member. Before that, Lin Mei's parents made it a condition that he had to have a stable job to get married. Now that he had a job, he thought it was a done deal. But who knew when Fei Ting went to Lin Mei's house? He heard their grandson blabbing. Grandpa said he must marry Annie off to someone with power so they can also get a job for Lin Mei's older brother. It was obvious the kid overheard the adults talking about pulling strings, so he just copied them. This time, Lin Mei's parents made things difficult again by asking for a 36-leg wooden furniture set as a wedding gift. Fei Ting didn't want Lin Mei to suffer, so he took a risk and promised firmly, "Give me a month, I will get it all done." Hearing that Fei Ting needed to gather the 36 legs, Fei Ni's whole family pooled all their savings together, and her dad even brought out his secret stash to chip in. The money to buy wood was enough, but hiring a good carpenter cost a ton of money too. If they hired a carpenter, there wouldn't be any money left for the wedding. At this moment, Mu Yang volunteered to step up and be the carpenter. He guaranteed that if it didn't look good, he would pay double in return. So they saved a big amount of labor cost. Mu Yang even said that the saved money could be considered as a wedding gift for his brother-in-law. Fei Ting was incredibly touched. At first he thought this wouldn't work out, but it turned out having a talented brother-in-law meant anything could get done. In the days that followed, Mu Yang personally designed the blueprints and styles, while Fei Ting helped out by nailing things and painting. The two worked enthusiastically. Right after getting off work, they jumped straight into woodworking. Fei Ting's parents took care of the home front, cooking food and making tea to nourish the two of them. The most important steps were all done single-handedly by Mu Yang. From the tables and chairs to the wardrobe and shoe cabinet, every single piece turned out perfect and flawlessly beautiful. Only then did Fei Ni's mom realize that this son-in-law was truly talented, and the more she looked at him, the more pleased she felt. Mu Yang discussed with Fei Ting that if there was any leftover wood after finishing, to let him have a little bit, and Fei Ting happily agreed right away. A month went by, and Fei Ting kept his promise, bringing the brand-new, delicately carved 36-leg wooden furniture set to the bride's house. Lin Mei's parents smiled from ear to ear, happily telling people to carry the stuff into the house. Seeing that Fei Ting was both ambitious and sincere toward their daughter, they didn't stop them anymore. Fei Ting and Lin Mei's wedding took place with lots of excitement. Fei and I was so happy, she felt even more joyful than at her own wedding. That night when she got home, she was surprised to see that Mu Yang had taken down the old bunk bed and replaced it with a spacious double bed. Fei and I was a bit shy. Mu Yang excitedly invited his wife to try lying on it, and even thoughtfully put a divider in the middle of the bed so she would feel less awkward. The two of them chatted and clicked really well. Mu Yang even randomly acted out a Shakespeare play and did shadow dancing for his wife to watch. In his free time, Mu Yang invited Fei and I up to the rooftop to eat hot pot and told stories about when they were elementary school students. It turned out that since back then, Mu Yang had a secret crush on Fei and I and always quietly protected her, even though he helped her many times and got misunderstood by her. Now that he finally married the girl of his dreams, Mu Yang felt completely fulfilled. As for Fei Ting, after transferring to the propaganda department that so many people dreamed of, he felt awkward because this wasn't his strong suit. Fei Ting worked really hard, but always felt like he was in over his head. His boss gave him the task of writing an article about advanced role models in the factory. He asked his sister Fei and I to write it for him, but the draft kept getting criticized as not good enough or nitpicked over everything. Fei Ting was depressed. His wife, Lin Mei, heard the boss comment that the article lacked reality, so she used her own casual, everyday language to fix it all up. Finally, the draft reached the hands of the top boss, Hong Chi. Ms. Hong Chi commented that Fei Ting's article wasn't deep enough, didn't have the grand scale tied to the country's background, and was too rough. MS. Hong Chi's ideas matched perfectly with the first draft that Fei and I had written for her brother. Fei Ting immediately gave her the original copy to look at. MS. Hong Chi praised it endlessly and demanded it be sent straight to the radio station that very day. Once again, Fei Ting scored a win and proved his place. Fei and I and Fang Yang sat on the roof looking at the stars. Thinking about how she still couldn't get into college, Fei and I couldn't help but feel regret. Fang Yang used the Big Dipper as an example to comfort her, saying that life isn't just about the college path, and sometimes stopping to look at the scenery along the way and feeling the meaning of life is a beautiful thing, too. Fang Yang asked Fei and I what other hobbies she had. He heard her parents say that the clothes she was wearing were all made by her own hands. Fei and I nodded and admitted it. It was indeed true. She often tried designing and sewing clothes herself. Normally, she just worked at the textile factory. But Fei and I was always curious about how the fabrics woven by her own hands would look if they were designed into clothes. To help Fei and I spark her creative inspiration, Fang Yang took her to see a movie. At that time, the outfits of the foreign actors in the movie were incredibly beautiful. Because they didn't have a camera, at Fei Ni's request, Fang Yang drew those outfits out by hand himself. Fei and I carefully studied the outfits of the movie stars. carefully calculating the proportions and sizes and drawing them on paper, then made slight adjustments to fit the fabric materials produced by her factory. While eating at the factory, Faye and I showed her designs to Director Yang. Director Yang loved them the moment he looked at them and couldn't stop praising her. Right at that moment, Feng Lin saw Fei Ni's designs, grabbed them, and tore them up, even mocking that Fei Ni's mindset had problems and she wasn't focusing on doing proper work. When Fei and I asked Feng Lin back what she had done wrong in her work, Feng Lin couldn't say a word. Feng Lin secretly did quite a few mean things, and now she openly didn't like Fei and I either. After Feng Lin left, Fei and I picked up the torn pieces of paper on the ground, trying to act like nothing happened, but deep down, her heart hurt like a pouring rain. Chu Huan knew Feng Jing had gone to Jiangcheng, having had no news from his wife for nearly half a month. He took advantage of a slow time at work to go to Jiangcheng to visit her. At Jiangcheng University, the research project Feng Jing was in charge of had a collaboration with someone else, and she ran into her ex-boyfriend, Liu Wei. In the past, Liu Wei and Feng Jing used to date, and even thought about getting married. But later, when he heard that Feng Jing's family had a bad background, Liu Wei immediately asked to break up. Meeting Feng Jing again this time, and seeing her join the project group, Liu Wei rekindled his old intentions. However, Feng Jing always kept her distance, having absolutely no feelings left, and even showed disgust toward him. Liu Wei went to find Feng Jing to talk about work, right when Chu Hua saw them. Knowing Liu Wei was his wife's ex-boyfriend, Chu Hua straightforwardly warned him not to cross the line. Hearing that Feng Jing was married, Liu Wei bitterly questioned her, saying she only chose her husband because she valued his military status and was using him to get into the project. Feng Jing didn't hide it and bluntly admitted it was true, saying that the person Liu Wei used to look down on would also have someone to cherish her. Liu Wei was about to keep making sarcastic remarks, right when Chu Hua stepped up and said that he naturally understood Feng Jing's mind, but he was willing to accept it. At the same time, he reminded Liu Wei not to butt into other married couples' business. Liu Wei had to awkwardly back off. The married life of Fei and I and Feng Yang went by super peacefully and sweetly. The two always saved the best things for each other. Whenever there was good food, they would secretly save it to bring home for the other. While working at the factory, Fei and I saw that the cafeteria had yummy meatballs, so she carefully packed them in a box to bring home for her husband. And Mu Yang was just as awesome, bringing home a whole steak for his wife to eat well. Knowing his wife loved to learn, Mu Yang even asked a friend to borrow the keys so he could bring her into the Xinhua bookstore to read for free at night. He always cared and created all conditions for her passion. Fei and I showed the book reviews she wrote to a teacher. The teacher praised her endlessly because her rich knowledge made her writing style deep and professional like a real writer. Getting the teacher's approval, Fei and I was incredibly happy. In her free time, Fei and I showed off her cooking skills, and the couple sat together sipping wine under the cool breeze. She silently thanked fate for letting her meet Mu Yang, because he not only helped her nurture her college dream, but also brought her a world full of books and precious experiences. As for Mu Yang, being with the girl he secretly crushed on since childhood was the greatest happiness in his life. One day, Fei Ni's parents came over to clean the house for the young couple. While fixing the blankets and mattress, the two parents freaked out when they found a marriage contract hidden carefully under the bed. Reading what was inside, both were stunned to death in shock. At this time, Mu Yang was going to Jiangcheng to visit his older sister. Hearing that his sister and her husband were having some conflicts, he tactfully advised her to learn to share and sympathize with each other. He said that even though the beginning might be a mistake, he still hoped both of them would have a happy ending. Fei and I later came to meet up too, and the couple took his sister out to hang around, helping her mood get slowly better. On the way back, Fei and I sat on the back of the bike, hugging Mu Yang's waist tightly, when he teased that they were looking more and more like a real married couple. She didn't say anything, but just tightened her arms as a way to say yes. The moment they stepped into the house, both had to face the wrath of her parents. Facing endless questions, Fei and I awkwardly explained that the marriage certificate was real, and only their feelings at first were acting. Her older brother Fei Ting was furious because he felt sorry his little sister was getting the short end of the stick, afraid that if they divorced later, his sister would be known as having a past husband and find it hard to marry anyone. Not wanting to see his wife get scolded, Mu Yang stepped up and boldly declared that for his whole life, he would never divorce. He confessed he had loved Fei and I for a very long time, and even when he lost his memory in the hospital, he still unconsciously drew her silhouette in his notebook. By the time he got his memory back, he realized even more that he couldn't live without her and wanted to take care of her for his whole life. Mu Yang's sincere and deep love confession finally calmed down his parents-in-law's anger. After her parents went home, Fei and I blushed and asked him if what he said just now was from the heart. Mu Yang didn't answer with words. He looked at her with deeply affectionate eyes, then took the lead and gave her a passionate kiss instead of an answer. Meanwhile, her older brother, Fei Ting, felt really suffocated with the office job at the propaganda department. He was a hands-on guy by nature, so whenever he was free, he ran down to the factory's public kitchen to help pick vegetables and slice meat. Only when he held a knife, a cutting board, pots, and pans did he feel comfortable. One time, his wife, Lin Mei, went looking for her husband and caught him peeling potatoes while singing happily, his face glowing with joy. Seeing her husband not caring at all about the editor position and just liking to stick his nose into the kitchen, Lin Mei burst into tears. She blamed him for being selfish, only thinking about his personal hobbies without caring about his wife's pride. She was afraid that if he lost his office job, she wouldn't dare to show her face to her family anymore. Seeing his wife cry, Fei Ting softened his heart and promised that from now on, he wouldn't go near the cafeteria anymore. Talking about his older sister Mu Jing, after listening to her little brother's advice, she gathered all her courage to call her husband, Chu Hua. But on the other end of the line, a nurse answered the phone, saying he was busy doing surgery. In a moment of anger and self-pity, Mu Jing immediately wrote and sent out a divorce paper, wanting to set both of them free. She nervously waited for her husband's reply, but what she received was a huge package. Opening it up, inside were 2 cans of beef and a big bag of white rabbit milk candy. Chu Hua didn't mention the divorce at all, but only wrote caring and thoughtful words, telling her to share the candy with her co-workers for fun, but absolutely forbidding her to share it with male co-workers. Seeing her husband being so thoughtful, Mu Jing was touched. She bought some yarn and knitted him a really beautiful sweater herself. When Chu Hua received the sweater his wife knitted, he treasured it. Even though the weather wasn't fully cold yet, he always wore it to subtly show it off. As for Fei Ni's parents, because they were afraid the 2 kids were tricking them again, they would call them over for dinner every couple of weeks to check up on them. However, every time, the old couple saw the young pair sticking together, even more deeply in love than when they first got married, looking nothing like a contract couple anymore. Lately, Lin Mei noticed her husband kept leaving early and coming home late all the time. She went straight to his workplace to ask, and his co-workers said there was no work to do overtime at all. On top of that, every time Fei Ting came home, he faintly smelled of women's lotion. Lin Mei started to get suspicious, so the next time she saw Fei Ting hurriedly pushing his bike out of the house, she quietly followed him. Lin Mei followed him all the way to a local house and saw a young girl open the door, sweetly call out brother Fei Ting, and warmly ask if he was cold. Lin Mei's legs went weak, thinking it was all over and her husband really had a mistress. Crying, she rode her bike to find her sister-in-law, Fei and I, to demand an explanation. Hearing her sister-in-law's story, Fei and I was shocked too and hurried with her to go catch the cheater. Who would have thought that when they opened the door, inside was a family throwing a wedding party, and Fei Ting was covered in sweat, standing in the kitchen chopping veggies and cooking, being called outside by his wife. Fei Ting honestly confessed. The chef at the factory saw he was quick, so he introduced him to do some side work to earn a little pocket money, aiming to save up to buy his wife a really beautiful new outfit. Understanding the whole story, Lin Mei smiled happily again. In her eyes, Fei Ting was still the most honest and hardworking husband in the world. Time flew by, and it was already Lunar New Year. Chu Hua carried his luggage to Jiangcheng to celebrate the new year with Fang Jing. Seeing her husband show up while she was quietly cooking noodles all by herself in the dorm, the ice in Mu Jing's heart completely melted away. As for Fei and I and Fang Yang, even though they were married, they had still been sleeping separately all this time. One night, Mu Yang came up with a trick, saying his blanket got soaked with water and couldn't be used anymore. Fei and I had no other choice but to share half of her blanket with him. So that night, the two of them finally became a real husband and wife. At the same time, Ling Yi and Yifeng also held their wedding after dating for a while. Thanks to her powerful mother-in-law, Hong Qi, taking care of everything, the wedding was super grand and lively. Fei and I and Fang Yang were still in their sweet honeymoon phase. Every day, Fei and I brought lunch to her husband. Mu Yang was now even taking jobs drawing comic strips for the bosses at the editorial department. Both of them were busy with work and studying, making progress together every day. Her older brother Fei Ting at the editorial department, however, ran into some trouble. He was assigned to write an article about the typical role models at the textile factory. Every time he looked at the pile of drafts and documents, his head would pound. Fei Ting begged his little sister for help to write it, but Fei and I refused. She advised him that if he was doing this job, he had to work hard to read the newspaper and build his vocabulary, believing that as long as he kept at it, he would do just fine. Having no choice, Fei Ting locked himself in a room, skipping meals and drinks all day to squeeze out some words, but still couldn't write anything decent. He went over to find his brother-in-law, Muyang, to blow off some steam. Muyang could only encourage him and advise him to study the writing style in the newspapers. Fei Ting knew this job was very precious, so he really treasured it, but he just felt like he was in over his head. Sure enough, later on, his boss called Fei Ting in and scolded him, saying his article was dry, lacked emotion, and couldn't be used. The boss even dropped a hint, telling him he should go home and ask his good-at-writing little sister for a hand. Lately, Fei and I put all her heart and soul into writing an article, hoping to get it published by the newspaper. After many sleepless nights, fixing it over and over, she finally finished a piece she was happy with. On the day the newspaper announced the results, Muyang rushed to buy a copy and brought it home for his wife. The newspaper really did publish her article. Fei and I read it excitedly, but at the end of the piece, she was stunned to see the author's name was Ling Yi. It was clearly her own brain power, but it carried someone else's name. Fei and I was totally shocked. Muyang had read his wife's draft, so he confirmed that Ling Yi had copied her work. Both of them want to find Ling Yi to get to the bottom of it, but she stubbornly denied it and even dared them, saying they had no proof. In the past, Muyang gave up his college spot to Ling Yi to save her from doing something stupid, giving her a way to live. He didn't expect that now she would bite the hand that fed her, to get justice for his wife. Muyang remembered that the trash cans at the newspaper office rarely got cleaned out, so that night, he dragged Fei and I along to dig through the trash. Luckily, they found the torn little pieces of paper. When put together, it was exactly the draft with Fei Ni's handwriting. This was the most solid proof. Muyang took his wife to meet the head of the newspaper. Faced with the paper evidence, Ling Yi started playing the crying like a delicate flower trick, saying she took the risk because she wanted to work at the newspaper so badly. Fei and I was kind-hearted by nature, so she didn't push it further. She only asked the newspaper to put her real author name back on it, appreciating Fei Ni's generosity. The very next day, the newspaper posted a correction. On the way back, Fei and I opened up to Muyang, saying she understood Ling Yi's struggles. Yi Feng was the only son of the powerful Madame Hong Qi, while Ling Yi was an orphan with no family to back her up, so she used any dirty trick she could to get a respectable job to lean on. Muyang cherished his wife's kindness even more. Even though she was the victim, she still kept her forgiving heart, completely unlike others who were willing to step on people's shoulders to get ahead. As for Fei Ting, because he wanted to make extra money for his family, he still secretly worked as a chef on the side. Unfortunately, Feng Lin caught him doing this. Having hated the Fei family for a long time, Feng Lin was thrilled to have dirt on him. She was just waiting for a chance to make Fei Ting get hit with heavy discipline. Tap 20 to 29, Feng Lin found out that Fei Ting and the head chef were going out together to make extra money, so she immediately went and told Su Qi about this. Su Qi called the head chef and Fei Ting over and gave them a terrible scolding. The head chef was scared of getting fired, so he frantically begged for forgiveness. Hearing that the head chef's family situation was difficult and he couldn't afford to be out of a job, Fei Ting took the initiative to take all the blame on himself, telling Su Qi that it was all his idea and asked to quit his job in place of the head chef. Anyone with sharp eyes could tell at a glance that the head chef was playing tricks. After all, Fei Ting had just started working, but now that someone had reported it, there had to be a clear attitude, so Su Qi let Fei Ting go. That whole day, Fei Ting sat by the small river, feeling sad and not knowing how to go home and tell his wife. After thinking it over and over, he decided to temporarily hide this matter. The head chef felt guilty towards Fei Ting, so he introduced him to a few side gigs that he usually took. On top of that, Fei Ting came up with the idea of selling baked sweet potatoes, so the money he earned was also enough to cover living expenses. Fang Yang's comic book was finally published, and he was extremely happy. Fei and I hurriedly went to buy a copy, but discovered that the author's name on the book belonged to someone else. She felt a bit unfairly treated for her husband. Luckily, there was still royalty money, and Fang Yang immediately gave all the money he just received to his wife. Fei and I right away planned to buy her husband a few sets of new clothes and 2 pairs of new shoes. While she didn't dare to buy anything for herself, Fei Ni's parents made a lavish feast to congratulate Fang Yang, and Fei Ting personally went into the kitchen to cook. Fei Ni's parents still didn't know their son-in-law had quit his job, thinking that all their kids had good places to be, so they were extremely satisfied. Fei Ting felt a bit guilty, using the excuse of fixing his bike outside and taking forever to come to the dinner table. Fang Yang came over to Fei Ting's side and stuffed all of his pocket money into his pocket. He knew that Fei Ting was out of a job right now and was having a really hard time. Fang Yang advised Fei Ting to be careful when street vending, because the crackdowns were really strict lately, and once caught selling things, he would get fined. Fei Ting said that he would definitely pay attention. Not long after, Lin Mei was called down to the police station. It turned out that Fei Ting selling baked sweet potatoes on the street was reported by someone else, and now both his cart and sweet potatoes were completely confiscated. At first, Lin Mei didn't believe it. She kept thinking her husband was a propaganda officer and couldn't possibly be street vending. After knowing the truth, she was so mad that she didn't want to talk to Fei Ting anymore. Mu Jing's scientific research project finally got results and was recognized by her teacher and leaders. Because she was so happy, Mu Jing drank a few glasses of wine. At that time, her ex-boyfriend was also there. Seeing her drunk, he offered to take her home, hoping to take advantage of her. But Mu Jing firmly warned him not to flatter himself, saying the relationship between her and her husband was very good, and her husband was the person she loved deeply. The ex-boyfriend lost face and quietly left. It just so happened that Chu Hua came to look for his wife, and hearing his wife talk about him like that, he was extremely happy. He escorted his wife back to the dorm, helped her wash up, and took care of her daily needs. To be together, Chu Hua decided to stay here and go to work at a hospital near where his wife worked. Fang Yang advised Fei Ting to have an honest talk with his wife. He thought that Lin Mei was a very kind-hearted woman and believed she would support her husband's decision. Fang Yang's advice helped Fei Ting clear his head. The next day, Fei Ting went to the department store where his wife worked. Seeing that Lin Mei was still sulking, he seriously asked her if she liked a husband who was a propaganda officer who only knew how to hold a pen, or if she liked a chef Fei Ting holding a pan to cook for her. Of course, Lin Mei loved him for who he was. The married couple let go of their issues and made up with each other. That night, while going to dump out Fei Ni's foot washing water, Fang Yang accidentally tripped and got hurt. Fei and I panicked and took her husband to the hospital but forgot to lock the house door. Feng Lin happened to walk by, and seeing the door unlocked, she sneaked in to look around. She saw the classic foreign novel Pride and Prejudice dropped on the floor, immediately considered it as proof of guilt, and went to report it to Hong Chi. Right after that, Fei and I was taken away. Hearing the news that his wife was in trouble, Fang Yang hurriedly ran from the hospital to save her. To protect his wife, he took all the blame on himself, saying that the book was his and signed a confession paper. However, Fei and I also signed the confession paper because she thought her family had a clean background to begin with, and at worst, she would just get disciplined or fired. But it wouldn't be too heavy. Right when Fang Jing got time off, she and Chu Hua brought fruits to visit her little brother, only to see the house looking totally wrecked as if it had just gone through a robbery. Understanding the whole story, Mu Jing asked an acquaintance to take her to Hong Chi's house to find out the truth. In reality, those books were just world classics, and even college professors secretly allowed students to read them. Plus the fact that someone spoke up for them. Hong Chi didn't fire Fei and I, but confiscated their house instead. Having lost their newlywed home, Fei and I and Mu Yang had to move back to her parents' house temporarily, because he didn't want to intrude on his parents-in-law's lives. Mu Yang took the initiative to move out and stay at his sister's dorm. A few days later, a huge earthquake happened in Beishan, and the aftershocks spread all the way to Jiangcheng, making many houses collapse. During the disaster, Fei and I bravely saved a little girl's life. Fang Yang quickly set up temporary tents for everyone. Worried that his wife wouldn't be used to sleeping in a shared tent with the crowd, he personally set up a separate small tent just for her. The married couple got to be together again, leaning their heads on each other, feeling incredibly warm and safe. Because the disaster situation was serious, the newspaper office sent reporters to the front lines to report the news. Thanks to his excellent illustration skills, Fang Yang was also sent to help in the disaster zone. Time was tight, so he didn't have time to go home and pack his things. He only had time called to give the news. But his wife's co-worker was the one who answered the phone. Hearing the news, Fei and I hurriedly packed some clothes and ran to give them to her husband. But the convoy had already started rolling. She ran chasing after them for a long distance, thinking it was hopeless, when suddenly she heard Mu Yang calling out. It turned out he heard his wife's voice, so he jumped off the truck and came back. The married couple hugged each other, not wanting to part, but because of his mission, Mu Yang had to comfort his wife and quickly hit the road. Chu Hua also received orders to go provide medical relief. Hearing that some co-workers had died in the line of duty, Chu Hua worried that if something bad happened to him, it would make Mu Jing suffer. So before leaving, he gave her a divorce paper so she could move on if he didn't come back. Mu Jing understood her husband's intentions. She tore the paper to pieces right in front of him and told him he absolutely had to come back safely. On the truck, Mu Yang opened the bundle his wife sent. Inside were all kinds of canned food and medicine. Holding the little note from Fei and I, he felt a surge of emotion in his heart, clearly feeling the warmth of his family. Arriving at the disaster zone, the scene in front of his eyes was extremely miserable. Houses were collapsed, and injured people were lying everywhere. Mu Yang eagerly went to set up tents, while Chu Hua also threw himself right into doing surgeries to save people, completely forgetting his own safety. Right here, the two brothers-in-law ran into each other. During the day, they worked their hardest, and at night, they looked at the moonlight together, sending their missing thoughts to their loved ones back home. Back home, Fei and I went to see Mu Jing, but there was no news of Chu Hua either. She anxiously listened to the radio every day. When she heard the news that the disaster zone had aftershocks again and some comrades were heavily injured, Fei and I couldn't sit still. After not getting any news from her husband for several days in a row, she hurriedly ran to ask Mu Yang's uncle, but there was absolute silence on his end too. Unable to just sit and wait anymore, Fei and I ran to find Hong Qi, desperately begging her to dispatch her to the disaster zone. Hong Qi was a bit hesitant because that place was currently very dangerous with aftershocks happening constantly, and Fei and I was a girl traveling a long way. If something happened, how could she explain it? But seeing how determined she was to go find her husband, she finally agreed. Fei Ni's parents packed all the food and drinks they could find into her luggage. Even though their hearts ached for their daughter, the old couple still let her hit the road. After a long and bumpy journey, Fei and I finally made it to the epicenter. Looking at the crowds of injured people lying all over the place, everyone looking tired and full of pain, her heart squeezed. She went looking through every single tent and every single hospital bed, and then broke down crying when she saw a familiar figure. She yelled Fong Yang's name out loud. It really was him. Fong Yang's face was covered in mud and dirt right now because he was so busy digging through the rubble to save people. Seeing his wife show up, he was beyond thrilled. He quickly washed his face roughly and then told her about the situation. Then told her she should go home early because he still had to go deeper into the area. But Fei and I firmly insisted on staying right by her husband's side. Having no other choice, he had to let her stay with him to join the rescue work. After more than 10 busy days, the relief work also slowly came to an end. Back in their hometown, Fei Ni's parents went to the security room every day to wait for letters, just hoping to get a few words reporting they were safe. Even though Fong Jing rarely showed her feelings, she couldn't sit still either because she was so worried about her husband. Finally, Chu Hua came back too. The husband and wife hugged each other tightly after so many days apart. The married couple Fong Yang and Fei and I also returned home safely. Seeing the whole family reunited all together again, her parents were so happy they shed tears, and hurriedly went to cook a really delicious meal to celebrate. Speaking of Ling, this girl was smart by nature and had her eyes set on the seat at the propaganda department of the Jiangmian textile factory for a long time. Instead of directly asking her mother-in-law for help, she cleverly asked her husband, Yi Feng, to put in a good word with her. Seeing that her daughter-in-law was educated and wanted to work at the factory, Hong Qi went to arrange it right the next day. The head of the propaganda department, surnamed Feng, heard that Ling was the boss's daughter-in-law and a college student with writing talent, so he warmly welcomed her right away. Meanwhile, the incident of Fei Ting selling baked sweet potatoes was caught by his brother-in-law. This brother-in-law didn't hold back at all and took the story straight to his parents-in-law. Hearing the news that their son-in-law lost his job and had to do a lowly trade, Lin Mei's parents immediately changed their attitude, throwing out sarcastic and looking down comments. Lin Mei couldn't stand seeing her husband get bullied by her own family, so she angrily grabbed her bag and dragged her husband straight out. Fei Ting knew he was in a losing position, so he loved his wife even more. He promised Lin Mei that no matter what, he would never let her go hungry, even though he was a tall, bright, and hardworking young man, because he didn't have a stable job yet. He often had to take the dirty looks from his parents-in-law and the sarcasm from his brother-in-law. He made up his mind that he had to find a decent job soon so his wife could be proud. After his field trip, Fong Yang took everything he saw and heard in the disaster zone and drew it into a serial comic book. His uncle wanted to help his nephew find a way to publish it, so he asked teacher Yuan, who was well known in the publishing world, to help so both of them could put their names on the publication. At first, Mu Yang was very open to listening to feedback, but he started feeling like something was wrong when teacher Yuan demanded to delete many realistic details, especially the image of the brave female textile worker going to help with the relief. Teacher Yuan didn't believe there was any girl in the world that brave, even though Mu Yang explained that it was exactly his own wife. Teacher Yuan still stubbornly demanded to fix it his way to make it make sense, because he wanted to respect the truth and the people who actually sacrificed their lives in the flood zone. Fong Yang refused to cooperate with teacher Yuan. He decided to create it all by himself, keeping the most authentic things exactly as they were. After finishing the drawings, the first person he showed them to was Fei and I. She looked at them over and over and praised them endlessly because every single character looked so lively. He even drew the mole on her brother-in-law, Chu Hua's face. His wife's support made Mu Yang way more confident in his own work. The fact that Madame Hong Qi introduced Ling Yi into the propaganda department made Feng Lin hate it to the core, because she originally wanted to get her boyfriend into that spot. Taking advantage of the chance when the factory got a new vice director and Madame Hong Qi got transferred down to the workshop, Feng Lin stepped up to report her for using the back door and abusing her power to get benefits for her family members. Madame Su Qi couldn't believe that the person she used to guide turned out to be a snake in the grass, stabbing her in the back so painfully in front of so many people. She was so frustrated that she went home and refused to eat or drink for 2 whole days. Seeing this, Ling Yi immediately went with her husband to meet the vice director, bringing out her college degree and her articles to prove her skills. After looking them over, the vice director saw that Ling Yi truly had talent, and her getting into the propaganda department was totally well-deserved, not just riding on her mother-in-law's coattails. On the contrary, he really hated Feng Lin's backstabbing habits, so he made the decision to transfer her down to work directly as a laborer in the workshop. A little while later, Feng Yang received a letter from his parents announcing they were about to come back. He got ready to hit the road to Yunnan to pick up his parents and asked his sister if she wanted to go with him. The Jiangmian textile factory had a new vice director, which led to a series of changes, typically the fact that the basketball team was about to be disbanded. Yi Feng was a mama's boy who had been pampered since he was a child, and now that he had no support, he didn't even know basic social skills. Hearing the news that the team was being disbanded, he even hurriedly ran to argue with the vice director, saying that doing so lacked ambition. The vice director was very angry at being insulted to his face by a childish young man like that for the first time. So he replied bluntly that his ambition was for production and technical improvement, and whether basketball won or lost didn't matter at all. Other members of the team had all quickly found spots in other workshops or departments, leaving only Yi Feng not knowing where to go. Hearing that the factory only had open spots in the security team and the kitchen, Yi Feng couldn't accept it and went to ask his former teammates if anyone wanted to switch jobs. However, regarding those good bros from back then, now no one would give up their spot. Out of options, Yi Feng ran back to find his mother for help. At this time, Madame Su Qi had also gone down to work as an ordinary worker. Hearing her son complain, she reminded him that labor has no high or low status, and working in the kitchen wasn't a bad choice. When his biggest support was gone, and even his own mother accepted working in the factory, Yi Feng had to sadly follow the organization's arrangement. Meanwhile, the head chef of the kitchen found Fei Ting and told him that the kitchen was short-staffed and wanted him to come back as a kitchen assistant. Fei Ting was overjoyed after hearing that, since he loved cooking so much, now being called back to his true strength. Even though the pay wasn't as high as when he was at the propaganda department, what could be happier than doing the job he loved? Fei Ting was so moved, he almost cried. Lin Mei took him home, and only then did Fei Ting's parents find out their son had been unemployed for a long time. Luckily, his father was open-minded. He said everyone has their own path and shouldn't be forced, and even praised Fei Ting for really having a talent for cooking. On the first day of work, both Fei Ting and Yi Feng were in the kitchen, but their spirits were worlds apart. Fei Ting had a beaming face and worked energetically, while Yi Feng was moping like a wilted eggplant, without any bit of life. Seeing Fei Ting happy with everything he did, Yi Feng found it strange, but Fei Ting encouraged him, saying that serving the working class is a very glorious thing. At noon, Fei and I went down to the cafeteria to get food and saw Yi Feng there. She encouraged him. Before, you were on the court providing spiritual food, and now being in the kitchen is also a contribution, but it's providing physical food for everyone. Fei Ni's wise words helped Yi Feng let go of his heavy heart, remembering the first time they met. Fei and I had also held a flag to cheer for them during their game. Now that she continued to encourage him, Yi Feng was no longer discouraged. He happily scooped a lunchbox full of meat for Fei and I. Feng Lin saw her rice bowl only had a few pieces of meat and angrily cried out about the unfairness. Yi Feng didn't hold back at all and replied bluntly that if she thought it was unfair, she should come in here and scoop it herself. Feng Lin was shut down, and while eating, she purposefully used a sarcastic tone to mock Fei and I, saying that Feng Yang's parents were about to come back. They were all educated people. So surely Feng Yang taking so long to pick them up was because he was starting to get tired of Fei and I. Right then, Feng Yang appeared and warned her not to mind other people's business, saying the feelings between him and Fei and I were still very good and she shouldn't dream of driving a wedge between them. Fei Ni's parents heard the news that the in-laws were coming back, so they had prepared gifts early on. Fei and I was worried her parents-in-law wouldn't have food stamps, so she took all the stamps and industrial goods coupons she had saved and gave them to them. Feng Jing originally planned to go meet her parents, but because her husband's grandmother was seriously ill, seeing Chu Hua's face pale with worry, She also hurried to follow her husband to visit her. When Fang Yang's parents returned, the organization reallocated 2 rooms in the old house for them. So, the couple Fei and I and Mu Yang had their own space again. Mu Yang's parents felt very warm and happy when they heard their son say he would move in together to take care of them. Fang Yang and Fei and I moved into his parents' house together. The spacious room made them feel like they finally had a real home of their own. Looking around the room, Fei and I was surprised to find the word Fei carved into the headboard. Fang Yang smiled and explained that he carved it when he was just 16. That meant he had liked her since many years ago, and his feelings hadn't changed at all even now. Hearing that, Fei and I blushed and quickly grabbed a tool to carve Fang Yang's name right next to it. Time flew by, and it was that time of the year again to apply for college. Just like always, Fei and I put in her college application. When the factory's vice director saw her application, he got curious and asked why she kept applying year after year. Fei and I answered honestly that she really loved reading and wanted to go to college to learn more so she could become a writer one day. The vice director, who had met all kinds of people, saw the pure and sincere look in Fei Ni's eyes. He told her the factory had recommended her to Ningzhou University, believing the results would come out soon, and told her to use the coming days to prep well. Meanwhile, Chu Hua's grandma got sick, ended up in the hospital, and needed surgery. Chu Hua was a very experienced doctor, but he once operated on his girlfriend and it failed. That became a nightmare for him, making him too scared to step into the operating room for over a month now. Now that his grandma was sick, Chu Hua's dad worried his son would be under too much mental pressure, so he didn't want him to join the surgery. Fang Jing saw her husband's worry and heartache for his grandma, and she believed nobody understood a family member's condition better than he did. So, she encouraged Chu Hua to step up to the operating table and do the surgery for his grandma himself. This totally confused Chu Hua's dad, and he didn't agree with his daughter-in-law's approach. Ling Yi found out that a senior from her college was holding a big role in the textile industry. Thinking about how Yi Feng was still just serving food at the cafeteria, she wanted to step in and help, hoping to use this senior's connections to get Yi Feng a job in the accounting department at the Jiangmian factory. Yi Feng also got all dressed up in nice clothes to attend the dinner. But when he saw his wife eagerly serving food to another man, he suddenly felt super annoyed inside. He didn't want his wife to lower herself and suck up to others just for his sake, so after saying that, he got up and walked out. Even so, Ling Yi still managed to get the job for Yi Feng. She even brought home some accounting books, telling him to study hard at home and try to master the basics within a month. Meanwhile, Chu Hua finally did the surgery for his grandma himself. The surgery was a huge success, and his grandma's mind became much clearer afterward. When she woke up, she even asked what Fang Jing's name was, and completely stopped bringing up Chu Hua's ex-girlfriend. His grandma's health bounced back fast, and Chu Hua's mood got way better too. He went hiking with Fang Jing. While they were talking, he told her the story of his ex-girlfriend. Back then, his girlfriend had a brain tumor, and he was the one leading the surgery. Sadly, the surgery failed, and that became the biggest regret of his life. Later on, he met Fang Jing, who looked a lot like his ex, even if he just saw her as a backup at first. After spending more time with her, he realized he genuinely liked her more and more. So now he wanted to say goodbye to the past and start a brand new life that only belonged to him and Fang Jing. Fang Jing's mom was Mu He. A few years ago, she used to be a college professor. When her husband was wrongly disciplined, she didn't want to cut ties with him, so she was sent away to work somewhere else with him. Now that the rules had changed, the two of them were allowed to come back. Mu He still really missed her old teaching life, so the school kept her on to continue her old job. Right now, Mu He and her daughter worked in the exact same office. But whenever she saw her mom, Fang Jing would immediately look down, and at work, she only called her teacher. When Chu Hua heard about this, he advised his wife to step up and say sorry to her mom, since they were still mother and daughter after all. But Fang Jing thought her mom would never forgive her, because back in the day when the family hit rock bottom, even though her mom and little brother faced a lot of unfairness, they still didn't want any drama inside the family. She was the only one who wrote a paper cutting ties just to save her own skin. And since her mom hated betrayal the most, she probably wouldn't forgive her for the rest of her life. At work, Fang Yang was always getting pushed around by his team leader. This team leader was a very famous local editor, and the editing room was getting ready to publish Fang Yang's comic book. His uncle kept telling him that he had to play nice with his team leader to have a shot at getting a full-time spot at the publisher later. Fang Yang used to work with the guy before, but since they didn't see eye to eye on creative ideas, they didn't work together for long. This time, thinking that scoring a full-time job would take the money stress off his family and make his wife and parents happy, he decided to just roll with the company's setup. However, while he was creating, his work was constantly questioned by the guy and forced to be tweaked over and over again. Fang Yang was always super serious and careful about his work, He thought deeply about every character and detail in his drawings before putting them on paper. So, he couldn't stand seeing his work get changed so much that it lost its original vibe. Finally, Fong Yang publicly challenged him in front of their co-workers. They would each draw a piece without signing their names, and then let the whole magazine staff vote on which one they liked better. If Fong Yang lost, he would pack up and leave the editing room on his own. The other guy agreed right away. Fong Yang's uncle was against him betting his job on this, but Fong Yang had already made up his mind. Not long after, the whole editing staff voted on the two pieces. It turned out Fong Yang lost by just one close vote. He kept his word, packed up his stuff, and walked out of the editing room that very day. When Fong Yang's parents found out their son was jobless, they were super worried. Right now, Fei and I was the only one in the house still working, and she would be heading to college soon. Fong Yang's mom pulled out a jade bracelet she had kept for years, planning to sell it to help cover the house bills. Fei and I accidentally overheard that talk and quickly stopped her. She wouldn't let her mother-in-law sell her precious item, and she said she had a way to make money. Thinking about his wife going to college soon, Fong Yang didn't want her to get distracted by family drama. So he rushed to the educated youth management office to find a new gig. There was a Western restaurant nearby that was short on waiters, so he went to apply right away. Since he was little, his parents used to bring him here to eat. This place had amazing ice cream and steak, holding a lot of his good memories. Plus, working here meant he could meet all kinds of people every day, which would be super helpful for his future creative work. So, Fong Yang worked at the restaurant with a really positive vibe. Right around closing time, a customer hurried into Lin Mai's shop, bought a bunch of stuff, and quickly left. Fei Ding came to pick Lin Mai up from work and suddenly noticed that customer's bag had been left behind. Lin Mai rushed outside to find the person who dropped the bag, but there was no one inside on the street. When the two opened the wallet to check, they found a ton of cash inside, more than they had ever seen before. Fei Ding suggested Lin Mai just clock out first, and if the person who dropped the bag came back later, they could return it then. That day also happened to be Lin Mai's mom's birthday. Her brother started begging their parents for money again because he wanted to transfer to the factory's transport team. Over the years, he had taken his parents' money multiple times to secure a job, but always failed. The dad didn't want to keep throwing money down the drain, but the son wouldn't give up, yelling and arguing, even blaming his parents for not marrying his sister off to the transport team manager back then, saying if they did, he would have been transferred there ages ago. Lin Mai arrived at the house to wish her mom a happy birthday, afraid of losing the wallet she found. She hid it inside a bundle deep on the bed. Unexpectedly, her useless brother spotted it. He flipped through her stuff, took the wallet out, and snatched 400 yuan from it. When Lin Mai found out, she knew her brother's personality perfectly well. Once he grabbed the cash, he definitely wouldn't give it back. So, she firmly demanded him to return the money right away. Fei Ding understood how serious this was. So he snatched the wallet back for Lin Mai and immediately took her away from the Lin family's house. Meanwhile, Ling Yi saw that Yifeng had no drive and just played basketball all day, so she worried he wouldn't be able to give her the life she wanted. She tried to talk him into hitting the books and studying hard, but Yifeng seriously couldn't wrap his head around math, and he had zero interest in crunching numbers on an abacus. This made Ling Yi super sad, and she even started feeling like she picked the wrong guy. Chu Huan knew his wife really wanted to visit her home, so he took the initiative to bring gifts to see his in-laws. Mu Jing's dad was pretty easy to get along with, but her mom seemed like she was still mad. After heading back home, Chu Hua hyped his wife up to gather her courage and clear the air with her mom herself. Chu Hua's words gave Fong Jing a wake-up call. After all, that was her biological mom, and deep down she had never truly cut ties with her parents. So, the next morning, right in front of her co-workers, she purposely called Muhi mom and stuffed 2 boiled eggs she had prepped that morning into her hands. Muhi reminded Fong Jing not to call her mom at work, but Fong Jing purposely ignored it. The whole day, she just casually called her mom over and over again, totally not caring about her strict attitude and scolding. When it was time to clock out and go home, Fong Jing asked Chu Hua to tell Fong Yang that the whole family should get together for a reunion dinner in the next few days. At the same time, Fong Yang's old team leader came to the restaurant where he was working. He invited Fong Yang to come back to the editing room to create, and also promised that this time he wouldn't change a single detail of his work. However, Fong Yang didn't say yes right away. Right now, working at the restaurant made him feel super free. He could draw whatever he wanted. He even took out the menu he just designed for the restaurant and showed it to the team leader. From that team leader, Fong Yang found out that the editing room was getting ready to publish a series of novels specifically about the lives of educated youth in the countryside. He immediately told Fei and I about this. Since forever, Fei and I had always dreamed of becoming a writer, so Fong Yang told her to try writing, saying maybe her work would get published. Fei and I really treasured this rare chance, So outside of work hours, she poured all her energy into brainstorming and outlining her novel. Meanwhile, Ling Yi didn't want to keep working at the propaganda department, so she met up with her senior Chenhua again, hoping he could help her transfer to a better unit. Chenhua pretended to say that this was pretty tough, and while talking, he put his hand on Ling Yi's hand. The crazy thing was Ling Yi didn't pull her hand back, just letting that creepy hand rub her hand. Yifeng was standing in a hidden spot and saw everything. He got mad and rushed out to hit Chenhua, but Ling Yi pulled Yifeng back. After Chenhua left, she straight up asked for a breakup. Yifeng's heart went totally cold. Back then, Ling Yi used to be so sweet and cared about him so much. Yet now she was so disappointed in him that she wanted a divorce. He went back home feeling sad. When Suchi heard that Ling Yi had a change of heart, she suggested writing a report letter. But Yifeng still worried that if Ling Yi's reputation got ruined, she wouldn't be able to graduate smoothly later. So he told his mom not to get involved in their business. After closing the room door, Yifeng collapsed on the floor. On the outside, he acted chill, but deep down he was really hurting. The next day, the two of them went to the civil affairs office to do the divorce paperwork. Yifeng was a good guy, so even when breaking up, he didn't turn his back on Ling Yi. At night, Ling Yi sat chatting with her senior Chenhua on a bench on the college campus, pushing him to hurry up and help her transfer to a better spot. Right at that moment, Chenhua's wife saw this scene and angrily cursed Ling Yi out. Chenhua instantly dumped all the blame on Ling Yi, even saying she was the one who made the first move on him. Ling Yi totally didn't know he had a wife before this, and only now realized she got played. Not long after, the school used behavior issues as an excuse to kick her out. Meanwhile, Fang Jing brought her husband home for dinner, but her mom still wouldn't forgive her. The meal ended in a heavy and broken vibe. After Fang Jing walked away crying, Fang Yang went to his mom and told her about the hard times his older sister went through all those years. He also said that the money he sent to his mom before was actually all given by his older sister. Fang Jing had always used her own way to help her mom and her little brother survive. Only then did Mu he understand. It turned out her daughter never left the family. Thinking about this, she couldn't hold back her tears. Since she was little, Fang Jing was raised super strictly by her mom. When she was young, her mom always taught her that her career was the most important thing. Because she wanted to keep her job, back then Fang Jing heartbreakingly wrote the paper cutting ties with her family. But now that her mom came back, she kept scolding her daughter because she thought she betrayed the family. That made Fang Jing slowly realize, maybe to her mom, the most important thing wasn't necessarily her career, but her family. Chu Hu understood his wife's feelings. He comforted her, saying that a lot of things at first might not be totally right, just like their marriage. But as time passed, that didn't prove they didn't love each other at all. On the contrary, the more they lived together, the more they realized they couldn't leave each other. Maybe because her mind was a mess these past few days, Fang Jing started losing focus. Normally, she rarely made mistakes at work, yet this time, she got a simple math problem wrong, making her boss notice and remind her to fix it right away. Fang Jing took it upon herself to handle all the fixing after we're alone. Muhi was standing nearby and heard it, secretly worrying about her daughter inside. Early the next morning, Fei and I was a bit shy as she wrapped a big scarf around her neck layer after layer. Fang Yang saw it was so hot, yet his wife still wrapped a thick scarf, which he found weird, and then he noticed a bright red hickey on her neck. He then told her to stick a band-aid on to cover it up. Fei and I listened to her husband, put a band-aid on, and went to work. Feng Lin saw it, and her drama-loving side popped out. She used the excuse of caring about the female workers at the Jiangmian factory, suggesting to the vice director that they had to look into the situation. The vice director was fooled by Feng Lin's words, thinking Fei and I was being abused by her husband, so he instantly agreed to let her go verify it. Feng Lin cockily knocked on Fei Ni's door, claiming she came to visit to protect the rights of the female workers in the factory. Fei and I took the band-aid off to show her, making Feng Lin lose face. In her awkwardness, she accidentally spilled coffee on the handmade sofa cover. Fang Yang immediately demanded her to pay 40 yuan in compensation, or else she had to write an apology letter. Where would Feng Lin get 40 yuan? So she reluctantly promised to write a super sincere apology letter. In the end, she just brought trouble upon herself. Meanwhile, Lin Mai's brother finally got into the transport team, but he didn't know how to treasure this hard-earned chance. At night, he secretly took on side jobs outside to make extra cash, and as a result, he unluckily got into a traffic accident and broke his leg. The transport team fired him right away. Now his leg was wrapped in bandages. He had to stay in a hospital for a long time, and he couldn't move. Hearing the news, Lin Mai and Lei Ding hurried to the hospital to visit. She couldn't help but blame her brother for taking on side jobs. But even now, he still wouldn't admit he was wrong, and even yelled loudly at Lin Mai. making her mad enough to walk away, declaring she didn't care anymore. Lin Mai's brother's wife still had to go to work, and now making the sister leave meant there would be no one to help later, making life even harder. Seeing his wife losing her mind all day and not being able to focus on math at work, Chu Hua decided to help her clear the knot in her heart. He personally went to the Fong family's house to meet Fong Jing's parents. In front of Mu He told the story of the first time he met his wife. At that time, Fong Jing was reading a math book, and inside was a family photo tucked in. Even though she wrote the paper cutting ties, that was just a forced choice. When the two of them opened up and had a deep talk, Fong Jing said she would forever be her parents' daughter, and that was a fact that couldn't be changed. Exactly from that moment, Chu Hua firmly chose to marry her. Thanks to Chu Hua making peace, Fong Jing and her mom finally made up. As for Fei Ding, he knew his wife was always worried about her brother since he had no one to take care of him. So every day, he cooked a few dishes and quietly brought them to his brother-in-law. Now that his brother's leg was pretty much crippled, Fei Ding advised that after his leg healed a bit, he could go to the cafeteria to do prep work and chop ingredients. As for Fong Lin, she got her karma. Her boyfriend FA just graduated from college and instantly asked to break up, using the excuse that he couldn't just finish college and marry a female factory worker. Before this, because of this boyfriend, Fong Lin did quite a few bad things, from helping him squeeze in to get a college spot to plotting to take over Fong Yang's house. Now that he got into college, the FA looked down on her for just being a worker and firmly broke up. It was too late for Fong Lin to regret it, because her mind was a mess. She even broke a few machines at the factory while working and finally got fired. Meanwhile, Fei Ni's house was finally returned. She ran back, overjoyed to tell the news to Fong Yang. From now on, the two of them had a real little home of their own again. Fei and I and Fong Yang could sit together on the roof and stargaze again. Under the gentle moonlight, the two of them softly chatted. Fong Yang asked Fei and I if, right from the start, she knew taking care of him could keep her from getting into college, would she still choose to stay by his side? Fei and I honestly said that back then she was super desperate to get into college, but after she started taking care of Fong Yang, she slowly realized he was even more important than studying. Even though their marriage was just fake at first, the feelings they had for each other were totally genuine. The factory's vice director called Fei and I into his office. Because the policy changed this year, the college enrollment for workers, peasants, and soldiers was put on hold. The college dream Fei and I always wished for once again became something as out of reach as the moon in the water. Going back home, she burst into tears. Fong Yang was by her side, becoming a solid shoulder and a peaceful safe haven for her to lean on. Lin Mai's brother got into a car accident earlier, causing damage to the transport team. The head of the transport team came looking to demand compensation, but the family had spent almost all their money to treat Lin Mai's brother's leg, so they couldn't afford to pay. In the end, it was Lin Mai who brought Fei Ding along to negotiate, because Lin Mai's brother used to give gifts to the transport team before, and the other side accepted the gifts and even hyped him up to take side jobs. If this got reported, they wouldn't get anything good out of it either. So, the head of the transport team didn't dare to keep giving them a hard time and didn't dare to bring up forcing Lin Mai to get a divorce to marry him again. Because Fei Ding found lost items and returned them to the owner, he was praised nonstop by the factory bosses and even got transferred to be a full-time worker. Su Qi held the newly published newspaper, happily running over to explain to Fei and I that the national policy had changed, and now she could get into college through the entrance exam. The light of hope once again shined in Fei Ni's heart. When she heard this news, she was almost so happy she cried. When Lin Mai's brother's leg got a bit better, he came looking for Fei Ding. This time he became way more mature and realistic, even ready to go to the cafeteria to chop veggies and help out. For the first time, he also admitted his fault to his little sister, saying soft words. Maybe after this whole mess, he truly learned his lesson. Fong Jing's boss told her that in a recent project, there was a chance to go study abroad, asking if she wanted to go to Germany for professional training. Fong Jing hesitated a bit, needing a few days to think it over carefully. When Fong Yang's parents heard their daughter-in-law was prepping for the college entrance exam, they helped find the books needed for the test. Her mother-in-law even took the initiative to tutor her in math. As for Fong Yang, he tried to create a quiet vibe for his wife, walking lightly around the house every day and limiting the noise. He even made coffee for his wife to help her stay awake to study. While prepping for the test, Fei and I also collected and organized the drawings Fong Yang had done up until now. She even threw a little art exhibition for him on the rooftop. Fong Yang was super touched. He had dreamed of having his own exhibition for a long time, and today his wife helped him make that dream come true. Right at that moment, he decided for now on he would study hard and try to take the college entrance exam, saying maybe he could step into college together with his wife. Chuhua heard Fong Jing still hadn't accepted the offer to study in Germany, so he took the initiative to go to his wife, advising her to treasure this rare chance. Getting her husband's support, Fong Jing felt super warm inside. When sending her off abroad, Chuhua softly told his wife to rent a more spacious place in Germany, because he would be going there soon too. His hospital also had a spot to study in Germany, and Chuhua worked hard to grab that chance. Fei and I and Fong Yang started their long, endless days of test prep. Finally, both of them got into college just like they wanted. Fei and I got into the literature department, and Fong Yang passed the test for the school's art department. The whole family raised their glasses to celebrate. At this time, Lin Mai and Fei Ding were also about to welcome their first child. Life went on, and it seemed like after a long, tough journey, everyone finally waited until the day the clouds cleared and the moon shined bright. The movie ends here. Please hit a like and subscribe to support us, and thanks for watching.